I actually started my research career in dealing with in looking at adolescents, adolescent girls in rural areas, and what I believe is at the very root of violence against women is early marriage. What happens is that your adolescence is cut short during when you're married off at 14 or 15 or 16, and that not only changes your status from a daughter to a daughter-in-law, but puts you in a power relationship that is, it's very biased against the girl. For example, in our country, traditionally, girls were married off at a young age, like 14 or 15 or 13. Even now, we have more than 59% of the girls are married by the age of 18, and of them, about 15% are married by the age of 15. So even though the age of marriage has gone up, it's still very low. And conventionally, what happens is that you get married to an older man. So from the very beginning of the marriage, there's a power imbalance, and because the girl has to leave school, she doesn't acquire, or she's not allowed to grow older, grow mature, and have her own opinions or her own voice about what she wants, what she needs. So her ability to negotiate in a marriage is highly, becomes highly limited, and that means that she has very little control over childbearing, very little control over their sexual relations, and therefore she is much more susceptible to violence. Okay, so there are several factors which lead to early marriage. One of them is, of course, the poverty factor. Parents get daughters married off. If they're poor, then they have less resources to invest in the girl child and all of that. But at the same, there's also the question of security, not being able to assure a secure life to the adolescent girl if she remains unmarried, and therefore, so there's violence even if she doesn't get married, and violence if she does get married. But another very interesting reason why early marriage happens is because of the demand for young brides. So there is a notion of, molding a girl being like a clay, a lump of clay, and you can mold the clay in whichever shape you want. So people want to bring in daughters-in-law who they can control, who they can mold to their own desires, and who don't have a voice. So it is the perfect setup for being, vulnerable to violence. We have seen that in our recent research, where we looked at early marriage during COVID-19, did people perceive that there was more early marriage than in normal times? And why did they feel that there was a more early marriage during the period of COVID? And we found that school closure has a huge impact on it. You may say that, education continued online and so on and so forth, but the fact is that the girls were physically at home, and there is something disturbing, according to I think in societal perception, about having these 14, 15, 16-year-old girls hanging about the house the whole day. That prompted decisions to get their daughters married off early, because so that was one. And the other was, of course, the fear now that because of COVID and because of online education, they had access to mobile phones and so on and so forth. So there was this fear that they are going to get into a romantic relationship now that they have so much time on their hands. They're going to elope and things like that. Not only that, we have found that within this couple of years of COVID, not only did girls get married, but they've already gotten pregnant, had children. And many of them were unwanted pregnancies. Many of them had children who were premature. Adolescent mortality makes up a huge percentage of maternal mortality. So violence against women in a broader sense, I'm not just talking about the physical violence or the mental violence and so on and so forth, but the violation of their rights is something that we have to consider when we talk about violence against women, and particularly in the case of early marriage.